On today's Andy Ari on 3 presented by BetMGM, we have a bracket, and it is a pretty well-designed bracket, according to our friends at BetMGM, because most of the higher seeds are favored over the lower seeds, which you don't always see. Now, this one looks pretty good, which means it's going to get pretty fun down the line, but where will the upsets come? We will try to find the upsets. Plus, the East region looks like the group of death. Lots of fun in that, just from the coaching names alone. There's a second-round matchup with potentially Dan Hurley versus Mick Cronin in Philadelphia. I don't know if there's been as much anger in one city as there will be if those two match up. It's going to be such a fun tournament. This is the best week of the year in American sports, and I say that as a pure college football guy. Best week of the year in American sports. We'll talk brackets all day on Andy and Ari on 3, presented by BetMGM. This show is presented by BetMGM, and there's no better place to be during March matchups than Las Vegas. This year, college basketball fans can win a VIP trip to the Court of Legends event featuring the Cavender twins. Simply place sports bets, and your position on the leaderboard will determine if you win one of the 25 grand prize packages. Just sign into your BetMGM account, opt into the promotion, and start placing sports bets of at least $10 to climb the leaderboard. Make this March one to remember. Join the Court of Legends leaderboard and make it legendary with BetMGM. If you haven't already signed up, download that app. Use the bonus code CFB, that's CFB as in college football, and start wagering with BetMGM, and you can get involved in that sweepstakes. Also, if you're already a member at BetMGM, we got a college basketball odds boost token for conference tourney week. Use that token, add a college basketball wager to your bet, and activate the token. If your wager was made with that token, you will receive extra winnings in unrestricted bonus dollars. So use that college basketball boost token as you watch those conference tournament games this week. Make it even more legendary with BetMGM. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers are not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER in the U.S., call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. Call 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. Call 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa or 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use the bonus code CFB and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. Welcome to Andy and Ari on 3, presented by BetMGM, and it is one of the great days of the sporting year because it is the Monday in which we have a fresh, clean bracket. Ari, beautiful, fresh, and clean. 68 teams. They have not lost in the tournament yet. No one has been eliminated. Everybody has a chance to win the national title.
Did you think that we were going to start the show and we weren't going to address what's behind you?
Okay, spring break. Spring break for my kids. That is my son out there fishing.
Yeah, it is that Jack kid on the dot out there.
Yeah, he squats more than me now. That's something I'm learning to live with. We got the helicopter going overhead. I'm not sure what they're looking for. Usually when there's a helicopter going overhead in the Keys, they are looking for a certain type of aquatic creature called the square grouper. So, you know.
I thought it was something from the show Bloodline, but okay. I'm happy that you're enjoying
it
your...
It is essentially something from the show Bloodline. The show Bloodline was very accurate.
But Andy's in the Keys, and I will be going on my small version of my spring break later in the week because I will be going to Vegas to bet and enjoy these games we're talking about. So, Andy, so excited, so pumped. Really, really enjoy this this week in sports. Obviously, this tournament is one of the crown jewels of organized sports in the world and in America, and I can't wait to talk about it. We're going to have John Ewing on from BetMGM today to talk about some insights, give you some ideas of trends and, you know, popular bets and things like that. It's a really exciting time for degenerates like myself.
I love this, and it's so interesting because, and we're going to get into this with John, but the effect of NIL on college basketball, we talk about it a ton in relation to college football. NIL is affecting the NCAA tournament, and John's got some numbers that he'll throw out for you, and you'll kind of it'll help contextualize it. But upsets are going to be harder to come by than they used to be, and so cherish them when they come. But it also means when this thing gets down to smaller groups, smaller numbers, that you're going to have some bangers. And I think last year's tournament was like that. Like, we had some incredible Sweet 16 games, unbelievable Elite 8 games. I mean, even like I go back to the round of 32 game between UConn and Florida that we'll mention it. We'll talk about this later in the show, but UConn's got a little streak going where they keep covering NCAA tournament games. And that one, they nearly beat the team that ended up winning the whole thing in the round of 32. So there's a lot of interesting, even if we don't get a ton of upsets in the first round, which I hope we do, because that's the best part of this. But I do think there'll be some interesting potential second round matchups. And shoot, we got one really interesting one in the first four, Ari. Yeah. We got SMU, Miami of Ohio in the first four. And, you know, we talked last week about Miami of Ohio, and we did a segment right after they lost to UMass in their conference tournament. We talked about Auburn on Friday and what if they make it, and what if they wind up playing Miami of Ohio. Auburn did not make it. Probably because one reason Miami of Ohio did. Oklahoma and Auburn were the first two teams out. Nobody's really complaining about that, Ari, and I think that was a one notable thing about Sunday. Last year, remember, we were talking about, North Carolina made the tournament and their AD's on the committee, blah, 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 blah. There's none of that.
Yeah.
There was none of that. Auburn lost 16 games. Like, it's okay that they didn't make the tournament.
Yeah. I do think it is kind of interesting, and I don't know. Sometimes, like, when things become trends online, I can't tell if these are a bunch of straw man arguments or if there's actually people out there who believe this, but there probably are a lot of fans out there that don't think that Miami of Ohio should make it because they didn't play anybody good all year, right? Like, that's like a talking point. And I do think it's kind of counterintuitive to what we love about the tournament, which is, atypical teams or teams that aren't big brand names having an opportunity to go and, shock the world, beat some good teams, or make a run that we wouldn't expect. And I think it's kind of lame if you don't want them in, because, it is very clear that they did enough in the regular season to have at least one spot in a tournament that has more than 60 teams in it. I mean, they won 31 games in a row. Like, that's a wild thing to do, regardless of who you're playing. They also attempted to schedule a lot of power teams that might have been in the quad one region of the, metrics that they use, and they weren't able to schedule them. So this wasn't a weak schedule by philosophy. And it's like, who would be against Miami making it? And, frankly speaking, there's a lot of discussion about, like, the first four and how much people care about it, whether it should exist and all these things. Like, if you go 31-0 in your basketball season, like, it's kind of annoying that they're in the first four to me. And it's annoying if you're, that's
the thing. And I was trying to explain last week, and this is what people got. It wasn't the people who didn't want Miami of Ohio in. It's the people who did want Miami of Ohio in who didn't understand that they're going to get put in Dayton. Like, they're gonna, because of the metrics, because of the net rating, because they hadn't played anybody good. I don't know if they would have been put in Dayton if they'd won the MAC championship. Maybe they wouldn't have, because the way Keith Gill, the tournament chair or the committee chair, described it, and Keith Gill, the Sun Belt commissioner, does a really good job explaining this stuff. I think he's probably the best of these people. And I realize that a commissioner can't be the football committee's chair, so you can't have him explaining it. But I kind of wish Keith Gill explained all of these for everybody.
I mean, he could moonlight and just explain things to us. He doesn't have to do anything. But
just let him sit in the room and watch it, and then explain what happened. Yes, because he's really good at this. So he explained it, and it wasn't complete on the CBS show, but then they had a teleconference, and he was able to finish out the answer. But what he was saying is, I believe it was Texas and NC State were actually selected beneath Miami of Ohio. But if you look at the true seed line that they released at the end of the bracketing, where it just says 1 through 68, So they were number 44, which was the last at-large team. And he was explaining that they actually were selected above Texas and NC State. But then when they did the scrubbing of the bracket, which is where they go back through and they use some other advanced metrics, including some predictive metrics, that they ended up below those two teams. It's at that point, those teams were all in. They'd already cut the line and said, this is where we're ending it. These are the teams that are in. We're now going to put them in order. So they did end up as the last at large, according to the true seed line, but they were going to be in. All that did was kind of maybe change who they played. They might have ended up playing Texas or NC State instead of SMU, who they're going to play. Now, the SMU thing is interesting. SMU from the ACC is a 7.5 point favorite, according to BetMGM, in this game. And I think that's where this comes in. That's where them getting pushed down to the last at large in the true seed line. That's what they're looking at. They're looking at the predictive metrics that are similar to what our friends at BetMGM used to set the line.
Yeah, and John Ewing, who we have on the show coming up, Andy, offered something off the air that we wanted to share with you. Miami has been a underdog only 4 times this year, and they have won all 4 games outright. Now, obviously, like
they only lost one game, and they were favored
here. But still, they've only been underdogs 4 times all season, and they've won all those games outright. And I'm assuming that Miami is going to be a pretty popular bet with points, and maybe some people with a little extra scratch decide they want to do.
Also, going to be a crowd favorite in Dayton. Like that's an easy drive for everybody, and so they're probably going to have the biggest crowd in Dayton. But yeah, it's one of those things that I think a lot of the responses I got online last week were, how dare you say that Miami could wind up playing Auburn? I'm like, look, Miami's going to be in the first 4. The only question is whether Auburn is too. And we found the answer is they're not. I
do take exception to the notion that Miami might have a home crowd. I think there is a private airport in Dayton somewhere.
For the SMU fans, hopefully they won't get there in the third quarter. Well, there's no third quarter in men's basketball. Hopefully they won't get there in the first part of the second half.
I live a mile and a half away from SMU, and let me tell you, buddy, they'll get there if they want to get there.
Well, they didn't get there when they were losing to Penn State. Remember, there was so much private jet traffic that they could not all get to the game in time.
State college airport system. Because so many private planes were flying in, and they were all late and like barely made it. They were already losing by like 28, I think, by the time those people got to the stadium, which is a major bummer. But, it'll be a fun game. And I do think that at least, regardless of where you stand on the Miami of Ohio situation, that at least it's an intriguing storyline that is being offered up to us before the tournament starts as we wait for Thursday. So, I mean, it sucks for them, I think, but it's good for us because we get to watch a game with an intriguing storyline before the tournament starts.
And my opinion on the first 4. I believe that if you are an automatic qualifier, if you're a conference tournament champion who automatically gets in, you should be automatically placed in the 64-team field. I think the first 4 should be all at-larges. And I wish there were, instead of just the 2 at-large games with Texas and NC State and SMU and Miami of Ohio, I wish there were 4 at-large games, because I feel bad for the teams that have already won their way into the tournament and now have to play each other. And I know, I've had some people say, yeah, but they like that tournament unit when they win, and then they go, get shelled by a 1 seed. Yeah, but what about the other team that was supposed to be in the tournament? And I know you say that the official people say that the first 4 is the tournament. It's not the tournament. The tournament is 64 teams. It's somewhere not Dayton.
And it starts on Thursday.
You've made Dayton the first 4. Yeah, it starts Thursday. So if you're not playing Thursday or Friday, you're not in the real tournament. So that's the part that bugs me, is those should be at large. And look,
who did enough to earn their way during the regular season should not have to play an extra game. It's a fair thought process. Yes.
Well, not the regular season, in the conference.
And in the conference, but you know what I mean. Before the selection,
Miami of Ohio certainly earned its way in the regular season. And look, if you don't like the way this is, contact your favorite conference commissioner and ask them to change their reliance on the net ratings, because that's where this is coming from. That's why they wound up in Dayton. It was because of who they played. And again, we've talked about it. They tried to play some people and didn't get a lot of responses from people who probably didn't want to play them.
It wasn't the best outcome, but it certainly wasn't the worst outcome either. So, they get a chance.
Ari, I want to talk to you about this East region because it is, from a brand name standpoint, just stacked. You've got Duke as the 1 seed. You got Rick Pitino and St. John's as the 5, and I think they probably, I'm not quibbling much with the way the committee seeded this thing. They might have a little quibble. Maybe they should have been on the 4 line, but you've got St. John's as the 5. You got Kansas as the 4. You've got Michigan State as the 3. You've got Mick Cronin and UCLA as the 7. Like you've got UConn as the 2. Like Mick Cronin and and Danny Hurley could be matching up in Philadelphia on Friday,
which is an appropriate city for them to match up into. By the way,
sorry, on Sunday, not on Friday. They play their first round games Friday. On Sunday, they would be matching up if UCLA beats UCF, if UConn beats Furman. Mick Cronin and Dan Hurley, 2 bald guys who might be. Are they the angriest coaches in America when they get mad?
I think so.
Like angrier than any football coaches.
Who's the angriest football coach?
Good
Pat
question.
Narduzzi.
It is Pat Narduzzi, but when he gets mad, Pat Narduzzi's delightful when he's not mad.
But who gets angry the most, and who is like violent when they're angry in like a verbal way?
I think it's Narduzzi.
Yeah,
but this is an incredible one. Like they're not all going to get to DC, and they're obviously in different places. But like in Buffalo, you've got Patino, Dusty May, and Tom Izzo all together.
Can we just call this the Jim Calhoun bracket? And just
we should
just in honor.
We should in his honor.
Famously angry a lot.
Well, the best part is if you get the Cronin Hurley matchup, it's gonna be in Philly, which is an angry city.
It's an angry city. It's good. No, but I do like the bracket region because like you do have a lot of star power. And Andy, we talk about this every year, and it's so interesting to me because on one hand, everybody craves and roots for and is inherently interested by the Cinderella. But then I think by the time you get past the Sweet 16, the Cinderella story comes to a close and people really sink their teeth into, the big brands and who's the best and who's actually going to win the thing. And I wonder if as we move forward into college basketball's new system where it's harder to maintain or retain rosters, for 3 or 4 years of really good players, now that players are getting poached and paid more to go to power schools, if the instances of Cinderella become fewer and far between, but also then creates a more pure and high-powered tournament across the board. And I'm never a proponent for losing Cinderellas. I just wonder what the byproduct of that is if we get to a point where there isn't a 12-5 upset every year. Yeah,
and I think our idea of like a true Cinderella who makes a deep run just may end up having to change. It may be that kind of mediocre power conference team that gets hot. Like remember when NC State made the Final Four a few years ago and they had DJ Burns Jr., like the 275-pound big man.
I was just like, backing people up out of the gym. Yeah, it was awesome.
That's the kind of Cinderella I think we're going to get from now on.
I also think that's the kind of Cinderella we're getting in football too. Like Miami to a certain extent was Cinderella last year. Indiana, for very different reasons, was Cinderella and they won the national championship. So like, I think that anybody not Duke, North Carolina, Arizona, and all the typical teams that you get, the lower half power teams that aren't typically successful in basketball who make runs. It's the Vanderbilts of the world in football who aren't typically successful, but all of a sudden are 10-2. Like those are the teams that I think are going to be interesting. But football just never offered, UMBC as an option. So, we'll see how it goes. But I think that I wonder if and I say this with John Ewing on the interview, but I wonder if like the reverse of the parity that we're getting in football might actually be occurring in basketball.
Well, did you catch UMBC trolling Alabama?
I did.
Yeah, they when they beat Virginia, when they won that 16-1 game, they trolled Alabama football, or they said something like Alabama you up. And then this year they did not. They said we're going after Indiana football because we want relevant football teams. It's just cold.
Just got to keep it going.
The Retrievers don't play. They're just violent online.
I think it would be a really awesome job if you were given access to a social media account and then could tweet talking shit to people. like with a pretty big following.
Well, and if your boss is okay with it, just let your freak flag fly. It's amazing.
Yeah, like I don't know if Wendy's. Apparently, there's a lot of funny tweets of like the Wendy's official account back in the day or whatever. Like,
yeah, Wendy's is still saucy, to use a term they liked us to use when they were sponsoring our show. Very saucy. We're talking about all these teams that start tournament play this week. Where are they all trying to get? Indianapolis. That's where you should be trying to get to, because April 4th, the day of the national semifinals, Ari and I will be in Indianapolis at the Culver's Game Day Hub. That's right. We are back with Culver's. You remember our partnership with them at the draft last year. It was so much fun. So many cheese curds, so much frozen custard. Ari even had a fish sandwich that made him smile bigger than I think I've ever seen him smile.
You know, the thing that's so funny too, Andy, about that is we got Culver's delivered to the Culver's activation. We wanted more.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's that good.
It was beautiful. And then they had all these butter burgers and frozen custard the next day. It was heaven. It was heaven. We're recreating heaven in Indianapolis at the Culver's Game Day Hub. We're gonna have so much fun. You can come watch us record our show, pregame show for the semifinal games. We're going to have some special guests. It is going to be a blast. So as you watch these teams and your team hopefully moves closer and closer to Indianapolis, you make plans to come see us in Indy at the Culver's Game Day Hub on April 4th. But if you can't get to Indy, enter the Culver's Swish Swish Dish Sweepstakes for a chance to win $2,500. But we hope to see you in Indianapolis on April 4th at the Culver's Game Day Hub. We do love some Culver's, and boy, I could go for some frozen custard right now. All right, before we talk to John Ewing from BetMGM, we got a little bit of breaking news. This is Monday, as we're recording this on early Monday afternoon, so we don't have all the info on this thing. That we may not have all the info by the time the show drops at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Alabama's Aden Holloway arrested on Monday morning for marijuana possession, which is a first-degree felony, I believe, and also failure to affix a tax stamp, which I'm going to need an explanation on that one. But according to the Tuscaloosa News, there was a search of a residence, and they found a pound of marijuana, or more than a pound of marijuana, also paraphernalia and cash. So, Ari, this is a really interesting situation. Obviously, this situation differs state by state, but Alabama is still a place where if you get found by the cops with a pound of marijuana, there's going to be a problem.
Yeah, you know, it's really bad timing, obviously, for the Alabama basketball team, and incredibly poor decision-making from Holloway himself. And I don't know how long something like this takes to be solved.
Well, that's the thing. We don't know anything yet.
Yeah.
Innocent till proven guilty. You know, we haven't heard from him. We haven't heard from Nate Oates yet. I do want to hear that first before I make any sort of judgments on this thing or figure out what's going to happen. But this is a very important player for Alabama. He averages 16.8 points a game. He is one of their best players and plays a ton of minutes. He averages 28.4 minutes a game. So this is the type of thing that can swing your NCAA tournament situation. I mean, they are playing Hofstra in Tampa later this week in the first round. They'll be playing on Friday. So we don't know what this means. Now, as of noon on Monday, he had been released from jail, so he'd bonded out of jail. But I don't know what this means from Alabama's standpoint. You know, this is not the Charles Bediako case where there's a temporary restraining order and he's trying to challenge an NCAA rule. This is a criminal case.
Yeah. And Nate Oates is going to have to figure out too, you know, how do you handle this in terms of whether he plays? I don't even know if we're 6 steps down the line there. Like, it's just a ongoing situation that just broke on Monday morning, and I'm assuredly we'll have more information as the week progresses, but really bad news for Alabama's basketball team.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough situation no matter what. So, but this is this is just sort of thing that happens NCAA tournament week. It feels like there's always something like this. It's not always a criminal case, but sometimes it's an injury situation. And then a team just has to scramble and figure this out. But we'll hear more. I'm sure we'll get the statement from Alabama, though. We are aware of the charges against Aden Holloway, and we will, react to the information as we get more information, something like that. That's probably how this goes. But at this point, with the limited amount of information we have, there's not really much we can say about this. There's not really any judgments we can make. We're not really I don't know that I would change how I feel about what Alabama's going to do in the tournament yet, because we don't know how they're going to handle this.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of one of these deals where, as information comes out, we will keep track of it and we will update you as we can.
That's right. That's right. Now, let's talk to John Ewing from BetMGM, because he has some very intriguing insights about action on the NCAA tournament and also some trends that you may want to take into account as you are watching NCAA tournament games and possibly using your BetMGM app. We are honored to be joined now by Insights Manager John Ewing from BetMGM, and been a fun few days at the book. Obviously, this is one of the biggest weeks of the year for you guys, John. But you sent us an email last night with some very interesting wagers that have already been put down on the NCAA tournament. Somebody's got $100,000 on Purdue to make the Final Four. Like, did they just get caught up in a wave of emotion from the Big Ten tournament?
It feels like they would be a Boiler fan, but you never know. Sometimes someone sees value. They got some value there at 6-1. Right now, Purdue's 3-1 to make the Final Four.
Yeah, when you look at the odds to win the national championship the morning of Selection Sunday before the the conference tournament finals, and then you have that like hour or 2 hour like black period where the odds come off the board, as now they're recalculating for like the way the bracket's going to look and people's paths to it. How much of a fluctuation do you see between, futures odds, in the morning of Sunday and then the afternoon once the bracket's put out?
Not really that much, honestly. They do such a good job projecting the field throughout the season, Joe Lunardi, bracketology, etc., that we didn't adjust the lines on the future book very much.
So, John, I'm always curious, because one way I think we can judge how the committee seeded the tournament is if you have any weird situations where somebody's a much higher seed but is either a pick'em or an underdog in the game. And I remember I covered a game in, I think it was 2009, involving the James Harden Arizona State team, it was the Chase Budinger Arizona team, where they were a 12 and they were favored against the 5 because it was one of those deals where they just had a weird beginning of the season and the seeding got all jacked up. But I looked at this one, other than 8-9 games, there's not a single instance where the higher seeded team or the worst seeded team is a favorite. The one that jumped out at me that I thought was interesting was an 11-6 game with North Carolina against a VCU team that had to win its conference tournament to even make the field. UNC is only a 2.5 point favorite. So that's the one. Like, those are the games that make me suspicious more than anything. Do you have a type of game when you're looking at the NCAA tournament that just jumps out at you?
Well, quickly on that UNC game, line's 2.5, no movement on the spread, and betting's pretty evenly split between the two. So no one's jumped on it one way or the other, public or sharps. Although I would imagine, given the brand naming with the Tar Heels, that they'll eventually take more action as we get closer to tip-off. And talking about no seed, higher seed, like a 10 over a 7 being favored, all 16 of the top 4 seeds are going to be double-digit favorites this year. That's the first time that has happened since the tournament expanded in 1985. So it could be really chalk this year.
It's so funny. And like, John, you're the gambling field. We're the feelings and philosophy field. And like, we had a discussion about NIL and how much it's changed college football.
Yeah.
I wonder if NIL has changed college basketball. And I wonder, like, if in 5 years from now, like, Cinderella runs are going to become rarer than they used to be. Like, and I don't know if you see that.
I agree with you. I'm thinking, and I was looking back through the data. So since the start of NIL 2021, the biggest seeds, 13 to 16, are just 25-39 against the spread. That's a win rate of less than 40%. And when you looked at the previous 10 years, they were closer to 500, even had a slight winning record. So, if you show you can play, a team from a bigger conference is going to pay you. You just start weeding out some of the talent at these smaller programs.
It's so funny, Andy, because everybody talks about college football as parity and compares it to the NCAA tournament, but because there are more teams that participate in their tournament and more teams in general that can beat high-level teams, I actually think that the reverse effect of what's happening in football might happen in basketball.
Yeah, it's interesting because the get old, stay old that they're using in football now was always the way you created a good mid-major basketball team. But it's almost impossible to do that now. You can't get old and stay old in the mid-majors. And John, one thing that jumped out at me is I felt basically since I have been aware that the NCAA tournament was a thing, when the bracket came out, I could just look at the 4 12-5 matchups, and I could usually pick two that felt like, all right, there's an upset here. This is going to be one of those. I'm struggling. Akron, Texas Tech is really the only one I'm looking at and going, all right, this looks like one that could be fun.
Yeah, there's some spreads. Wisconsin's opened as a double-digit favorite against High Point, and they're 5-12 on Thursday. Looking back through there. You said Texas Tech and Akron. Yeah. That's another one. Line open Tech -8.5. It's come down, and we're seeing about 60% of money on Akron.
Yeah, that's the only one. It used to be that 2 or 3 of those you'd find very interesting. Be like, okay, this is a classic 5-12. I don't know that we have the classic 5-12 anymore. It's probably what you were just talking about with the 13 through 16, where it's just going to be harder for those teams to win.
And those were just so popular. It really came into the consciousness of all bettors. You can find an edge taking an upset in that spot. And historically, they had covered the number at a high rate, even if they weren't winning. But that's all kind of evened out.
Yeah, I wonder what what the math of that is. Why is that the particular seed matchup that's given people trouble in the past? I wonder what it
tends to be the last at-larges and the first automatic qualifiers. And so the last at-larges are pretty good teams who had pretty good regular seasons if they're mid-majors. And then the first automatic qualifiers are the highest rated of those automatic qualifiers that got in, other than the power conferences. So that's why it historically was the best spot. And then your 5s are, kind of flawed, but pretty good power conference teams.
John,
but
I was wondering this, Andy, if you don't mind, or go ahead. Yeah. Why don't you go and I'll save mine for after? Because if you're
I was looking at the email John sent us last night, and just some fascinating stuff about who the books might not be rooting for. BetMGM has the highest liability on a couple of teams, and I was not who I thought it was going to be. It's Florida and Michigan, right?
Yeah. Those are 2 teams that have gotten action throughout the year. UConn also is another popular one. St. John's here during their run in conference tournament play are all liabilities, all teams that, if they took an early exit, it wouldn't hurt our feelings. But among the favorites, Duke and Arizona are our best result right now on the book, although they're real close to flipping from being a positive to a negative, and a good run by either of them in the tournament could have us cheering against them.
Yeah. Another thing from the email that I thought was interesting is that Michigan is one of the highest handles total, the highest, 14.8%. How much of that money comes in before the conference tournament? And do you think the result of the Big Ten championship game has any impact on people?
We've just taken enough action throughout the season on this that it's really hard to spike it, just from one tournament or a handful of games. So you see a little bit of movement on these teams, but really it's just consistent action throughout the season. This gives you a great idea, a sense of what teams were being bet and what teams the public thinks can cut down the nets.
Another thing, I mentioned that $100,000 bet on Purdue that you guys pointed out to us, but the there's a couple big ones on Houston. There's a $50,000 bet to win $450,000, and then there's also a $25,000 bet, and they got plus 1,100, so they can win $275,000. I'm wondering how many of these, and I know it's hard to know, but how many of these are fans, and how many of these are just professional gamblers looking for value? Like I think that plus 1,100 one, it's a pretty good value for Houston.
Yeah, it's a combo, of course. There's obviously a lot of bettors that are fans that bet with their heart, as most bettors do. And the ones I sent out, just a handful. There's many more that don't actually get approved. Every bet has to be approved by the bettor before we can share it. And oftentimes a lot of these gamblers don't want their big bets shared, because if they lose, they don't want to be made fun of on social media. Some people on Twitter are a little mean, if you can believe it.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
I've noticed.
I got to tell you, if I was placing, 100 racks on a game, I don't think I'd really care about what anybody on Twitter had to say. But the thing that I find funny, too, is that I think a lot of people view these big bets as like a guide to what you should do. Do you think that that's a fair way to think, or do you think that those are just one-off bets sometimes that shouldn't really be a navigation for people who don't know what they're doing?
100%. These are just bettors placing wagers, and they happen to have more income than we do, so they can wager a larger amount. Most of these are not necessarily, I would not just blindly follow any wager that was placed.
Yeah, Andy and I were joking about this before the show, but he's like, can you believe somebody bet $100,000 on Purdue? And I was like, can you believe that people have their own private planes? Like, not everybody is in our tax bracket.
That $100K doesn't mean as much to them. It's right. Whoever bet that $100K, it probably doesn't mean as much to him as it does, or her, as it does to me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
John, I think a large portion of fans, maybe not a lot, a large portion of people who are betting on the NCAA tournament are people who, especially people who listen to our show, who are football first, may not be as locked into the comings and goings of the regular season the way that they are in football, and then they join the NCAA tournament because it's a gambling event.
Sure.
What can you give in terms of advice for how people should navigate so many teams, so much information? How would you do it if you were kind of a layman going into this, looking at all these numbers?
There's so many games, right? And so much opportunity for action. So the first thing I would recommend to anyone is you don't have to bet on every game. I know it's very tempting, right?
What?
But
I didn't know this.
It's okay sometimes just to, watch the games, but not always have action on each one of them. But I would go through and what can you apply? Looking at a power rating, looking at a site like KenPom. Again, this is very basic. KenPom's been around forever, but that can kind of give you an idea of where these teams, you see a 7 versus 10. Well, what does that really mean to you in seeding? Like, how big of a gap is there between these two teams based on what they've done throughout the season, offensive, defensive efficiencies? You got to do a little bit of homework, right, to start understanding what these teams are about. Are they offense? Are they defensive first? And then, of course, listen to you guys. I know you'll have some fun nuggets. I have a couple interesting trends I can share as we get going here too.
Whoa, what do we got? I need all the help I can get.
Well, okay. One thing I like to look at, and it has been historically profitable, is just teams that make a high percentage of their free throws. Okay. It makes sense, right? March Madness, we see it all the time. Close games, there's fouling down the stretch. If you make your buckets, you go on, you win. And for bettors, hopefully you cover. So teams that have hit 75% of their free throws in a season as a team have covered the spread just about 57% of the time. So that's a solid win rate. As that percentage goes up, you get closer to 80%, you go over a 60% win rate against the spread. Two teams that match that are in the tournament this year, Vandy and St. Mary's, both of them are making about 80% of their free throws as a unit. So again, in close games where the spread's a little tighter and there's a chance that there's going to be fouling down the stretch, a good free throw team historically has been able to cover for you.
Yeah. And I imagine
Hold
those
on. I'm just looking at free throw percentage on everybody.
Yeah. And obviously,
that makes
too,
so much sense.
The spread is 7.5 and your team makes their free throws, they might lose by 6 instead of 9. Like, I mean, that's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. And then that's you because people are thinking, oh, it's that pressure situation. It's not the pressure situation. It's the team that's up 3 that gets fouled that then goes up 5 because they made both their free throws. It's not necessarily the you got to make this free throw to take the lead situation. It's those teams can keep leads, and that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. Another interesting trend for you guys. I had forgotten about this, but did you know that UConn has covered 14 straight games against the spread in the tournament?
No.
Had heard a couple things about that.
No.
Yeah.
First time I'm hearing
crazy. You know, they win the championships last year. They get knocked out early in the second round, but they covered as 9.5.
It was against the eventual national champ. Yeah.
Right. They only lose by 2, but they covered as 9.5-point underdogs to Florida. They're opened as 18.5-point favorites against Furman. It's already bumped up 2 points to 20.5. I think it's going to be a very popular pick here in round 1, especially as that trend of 14 straight starts making its round on social media.
Yeah.
Could the Paladins break the streak, Ari?
I mean, like we talked about this at the beginning of the show, Andy, but like I don't like these 25-point, 20-point spreads in this. I can't stand it. It's not a fun, enjoyable experience for me. The only time you ever, sometimes there's the NCAA tournament results where the team wins by 41 and you don't have to sweat. But most of the time I find myself sweating the most dumb things at the end of the game. It's like they're up by 27 the entire game and then they clear the bench with, 7 minutes left. And the next thing you know, you're only up by 14. I can't stand it. So that's not my favorite type of game to play. I like to play, less than 7 typically.
Well, John, does with these bigger spreads, is that where you might just want to wait and look at what's going on live?
Yeah, that's a good opportunity. I'm with you though. Like, it's really difficult to handicap motivation when a team gets up by 20 or more points. Are they going to drop the hammer, or like you said, are they going to empty the bench and rest their guys? But these favorites like that are all over parlays. They're very popular on the money line to just add a 20-point favorite, to boost the odds. So the book often is hoping one of these teams,
just loses,
is upset, and that helps them out.
So John's like me. He wants to see the walk-ons come in and just rain threes. Like, that's my goal. Like, that as someone who wasn't a basketball walk-on, because it's a very different level of skill. Those guys are probably better than a lot of the football walk-ons. But as someone who's a walk-on, I love it when those guys get in the tournament, and I love it when they get to score. So if they help some 20-point favorite cover, great.
But
and if it helps you, John, well, we appreciate your sponsorship.
Yeah, we do. The other one I want to look at, because I think it's super interesting, is futures. A lot of times we know that the path to the Final Four can mean every bit as much to some teams as how good they are. Do you have good matchups along the way? There are a lot of very good teams that are very, big long shots to advance deep in the tournament. And I'm wondering if there are teams that you have in mind that are long shots that might have a chance of making a run.
Oh man, the more we just touched on about top 4 seeds being such big favorites and most likely to advance. There was even we have a prop for this. It was total team seeded 13 to 16 to make the round of 32. Over under is 1.5, but the under is minus 200. So the book's telling you, the odds say they're not going to, the prop says they're not going to. I just keep leaning back towards it being really chalky, and I just haven't seen any long shot that I'm willing to put my money on.
Yeah, to me, Arkansas is a team that just won the SEC tournament and is plus 5,000. It's like, someone's going to maybe make a run, right? And you maybe get yourself a hedge opportunity or something, but identifying which of the 60 plus teams it is kind of a challenge for sure.
I wouldn't recommend this to anybody, but I did bet my Missouri Tigers at 500 to 1, but that's just because I'm a homer.
Well, it's interesting because like Ari just brought up Arkansas, and I think Arkansas is an interesting case because how much do the environmental factors matter? Like Arkansas just played 3 games in 3 days in the SEC tournament, and they're going all the way out to Portland. So, does that matter, or does it all kind of wash out? Because I've always wondered if you go deep in your conference tournament, does it matter in terms of what you do when you get to the NCAA tournament?
Not that I've seen. It's a bit of a mixed bag when you look at like from a covering perspective. Did you lose early in your tournament or did you win your tournament? It's just so many other factors that come into play there. But some environmental factors that have already kind of made their way around social media. Talking about my Missouri Tigers, they're playing in St. Louis, so essentially a home game for them. They opened 2.5-point dogs. It's down to 1.5. I think a lot of action on them driven by the fact that people keep saying it's a home game, but it's still a neutral court, different sight lines, etc. It'll be an interesting game. It's the capper, I think, on Friday night.
Yeah,
smart to put them in prime time, by the way, in the de facto home game. So John, well, good luck to your Tigers, but also good luck to all of you out there who maybe you're tailing John. Maybe you're fading him. Maybe you're fading us. But when we come back, Ari's rules for betting on the NCAA tournament. When a guy who bets on everything, who will bet on 2 ants crawling on the ground to see who gets there first, what are his rules for the greatest tournament in American sports? We'll be right back. So, Ari, I do wish good luck to John Ewing's Missouri Tigers. That is a very interesting game. I feel bad for Miami of Florida, the team they're playing. We talked a lot about Miami of Ohio, but Miami of Florida is the better seeded team that must play 10 seed Missouri in St. Louis. So that's, you just kind of, sometimes you get an unlucky draw in the thing.
Sometimes you're the bug, sometimes you're the windshield, Andy.
That's exactly right. You and Mary Chapin Carpenter taught me that. Ari, you are one of the most active gamblers I know. You are someone who would bet on pretty much anything. So this week, I am curious how you handle this orgy of unbelievable basketball activity. Like, how do you deal with this? How does your head not explode during a week like this?
Well, it does explode in a good way. Listen, I love sports. You love sports. And the greatest thing about the NCAA tournament is that there are sports on nonstop for 12 straight hours and like a bunch happening at the same time. It's like degenerate Christmas. And, that's why, before we met and after we met, my wife and I and a bunch of friends go to the Mecca, Las Vegas, for the first round every year. So, I really enjoy it. Now, the thing that I have a hard time with, Andy, is that people who watch and listen to this show know that we know a lot about football. We talk a lot about football. We're plugged in with football. We talk to people involved with football. I am a fan of college basketball. So, I just go in not feeling like I have a great grasp on everything. And that's what kind of makes it a little chaotic for me, but I think in a beautiful way. So I have certain rules that I like to live by, or certain things that I do or don't do that help me navigate it so I don't get absolutely crushed every time, I do this. And we can go through them one by one right now if you want.
Yeah.
One, I don't really come up with my own picks. I'm not the person that's going to outsmart the system. And there are a lot of resources out there in somebody that we have on a lot in the fall. Tyler Shoemaker is one where people who are actually crunching the numbers and the math who produce picks and give them out. I usually use that as a guide because if I went in there right now trying to be I actually think that this 12-5 game or this 12-5 game is going to do it. I don't know. I don't know any more than, even John Ewing knows. Right.
Well, I thought the number John Ewing threw out was really interesting about the free throw percentage, where if you're over 75% free throw shooting team, it's a 57% win rate. And I know some people might be saying, well, 7% above 50, how is that a big deal. That is statistically significant.
Huge
like
deal.
That's a big number.
Yeah. And I think that like using resources like John, which is why we had him on the show today, is important because I think 90% of people, and 61% of stats are made up offhand, but like a lot of people just go into it thinking, oh, North Carolina is playing so-and-so. They're North Carolina. They're going to, it's like, I think that's smart. I would do my best, and I will do my best for the next 3 days to educate myself and to read as much as I can and lean on people who know what they're talking about. Two, I very much don't like betting games, Andy, that have like 25-point spreads. And like I go back to even last year's national champion. Like Florida was I believe a 29-point favorite in the first round of the tournament last year before they won the national championship, and they were playing, I believe, was it Norfolk State? And they won 95-69. So like they did not cover their 29-point spread, and they were by far the best team in the I don't enjoy that experience of like your team not only has to win by 25, but has to like maintain intensity, and like there's too many variables at the end of games for me to enjoy that experience. Like that's not sports to me. That's just like, will my coach leave players in long enough where I can cover? So in those instances, if I do want to bet the heavy favorite, I like to chop the game in half, and I like to bet the first half, because that way, at least for the most part, like it will be a highly competitive game up until halftime, no matter what the score is. So
John mentioned that those are getting stacked into parlays. Do you do a lot of parlays, or would you prefer to just do the half?
I'm not a parlay person and I never have in any regard, because I think it's hard enough to be right in one game, let alone 3 or 4 or 5 or beyond. And there are a lot of people, like John pointed out, Andy, that will stack a 20-point favorite in there to try to get like the odds boosted a little bit, although it doesn't help that much if you're like minus 20,000 to win a game. But I've seen a lot of my friends who lose parlays because of the bonus add-in ones to try to juice the odds. So I try to just place 50 bets and win 35 of them or 30 of them, like that. Not 35. That would be a great weekend. 30 or 27 even if I win 25, I'm happy.
Well,
you just lose the juice. But
I think that's what, and people who are experienced with this understand this, but the people who are newer to this, you're just trying to get a little above 50%. If you do better than that, that's great, but that's a historic run. Don't expect it to continue.
Yeah, nobody's
out a little better than 50%. You're doing well.
Nobody's out here, shooting 75% on a consistent basis, because if they did, then they'd have the infinite money glitch. Also, I very much enjoy betting games live, and I don't know, depending on where you are, what state that you're in, or whether you're in person in Vegas like I will be, how much access you have to actually going to the window and doing it live. But if you are on the apps, or you have the BetMGM app on your phone and they offer those, like I find it very compelling, where you can find some very good value late games, second half of games where, a team that is favored by 12 is losing by 10 with 7 minutes left, and you can get them plus 220 or something. Like I enjoy that sweat. So if you want to like maximize your potential, instead of laying, 15 points before a game, maybe wait it out and see if there's a spot that you can pick that, also, it's also really great to like parachute into a game that's got 7 minutes left and already be in crunch time. A lot of times too, if you're betting a full game, like you don't really get into it, or it's not intense until the second half. If you live bet, you can enjoy the fray immediately. So that's something that
you can kind of guarantee that you're going to get that moment, rather than if you do it before a game, you may never get the moment. Like some teams just may blow somebody out, or it may not be that interesting. But yeah, if you do it at that point in the game, you're going to get the moment. I've been with you a few times when you've done this, and I always like when you ask my opinion on this. And I like, Ari, I am not the right person to ask for this.
I mean, I do it all the time. Like, again, I'm not trying to act like I'm some sort of like winning gambling genius. I do okay, but I have good days and bad days, like everybody who does this. But I do think that if you are patient and you wait, and trust me, it's the NCAA tournament. Teams that are supposed to win will be losing and will come back and win in the game. If you're patient and you wait it out, you will find a really good moment where you might not win the bet, but you can get tremendous value by doing it this way, especially if you really like a team or a game before and you don't get your action in before the game starts and you like wait it out and watch the game, like a lot of times you'll be able to get a better number in game than you got before the game. Lastly, and I know John it wasn't really a proponent of this, but I am. I like to try to identify and like, listen, John is probably more of a math guy who's just trying to surgically win money. And like, that's great. But like, we're talking to fans who are enjoying the experience. Like you might be a fan of a team that's in it. So you might be emotionally tied to a certain team, but I think it's really fun to try to pick 2 or 3 teams in the bracket that are very long shots that might have an advantageous path or might have an underrated team, or maybe somebody's a lower seed because their player was injured, their best player was injured for a large portion of the year and they're actually back, and trying to like hit like 50-1 type bets beforehand, because when those Cinderella stories happen, which they do every year, if you have a few shekels on a team that's a long shot who's playing an elite game, that's an electric feeling that I cannot explain to you. I think it's like heroin, except it can't kill you. You know, like it's just like being along for the ride of a run that you have skin in the game. And like most of the time, your team's probably going to lose in the first round, you know, or the second round. It's hard to thread the needle. But like if you try to pick a few horses that you can ride into the tournament with, and maybe not obsess so much over whether they cover the spread in their first few games, but just advance, like the Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final 4 can get really entertaining depending on how things go. And then you have hedge opportunities as well. So like that's kind of how I like to do it. But also I like to have fun. And John said something stupid on the show, and I'm like, and I'll say it to his face too. You don't have to bet every game, but you should.
You don't have to bet every game. Please gamble responsibly. You don't have to bet every game.
You don't have to bet any of the games. And I know that there's a segment of people out there too that don't care about gambling, and I respect that. Like if you just want to watch the games and enjoy them for what they are, you're a purist,
but
and that's
this
great.
Is the week when those people gamble, because if you put $5 in on a pool, you're gambling.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like everybody's got their brackets and whatever. It's like a lottery ticket, whatever. But like there are ways to have fun without like crushing the bank too. If you put a $50 bet on somebody who's 50-1 and they go deep in the tournament, there's a chance. And you find yourself rooting for them like you went to college there. It's fun.
Yeah, you don't have to be the person who put $100,000 on Purdue. If you put $5 on Purdue to make the Final Four, and that makes you some extra money, then
like I, for instance, am an Arkansas fan. Like I've never been to Fayetteville before, believe it or not. I am an Arkansas fan going into this tournament.
That team is so fun to watch.
They're fun to watch. They've got a coach that's been on this stage a million times. They've invested their money in basketball, and they're like 50-1. Why wouldn't I throw a few bucks on it?
A-Cuff is so much fun. And then like DJ Wagner and John Calipari sung his praises after they won the SEC tournament. But DJ Wagner is a guy who went to Kentucky. I think he was the number 7 overall recruit in the country. So he's supposed to be one and done. This is a guy who wouldn't even be in college if this weren't the NIL era. He would have tried to go to the NBA. Probably wouldn't have worked, but he would have tried. And now he is a very important player on a team that has a chance. Now, as Ari pointed out, their odds are long, but they just won the SEC tournament. If you can win the SEC tournament, there's a good chance you can go deep in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. And like, you know, it's not like their path to the Sweet 16 is hard. It's like impossible to overcome. Now you might get dicey if you're playing Arizona in the, you know, later in the tournament, which they will. But you know, hey, you know, you might get to that game and it might be Arizona versus Arkansas. You'll be sitting on a 50-1 ticket and Arizona will be a 4.5 point favorite. Like, it's not like it's some sort of insane, like I don't like betting on like Kennesaw State or Hawaii. Although, you know, if you would have done it a few times with some of the, I don't know how to identify those, but like teams that have really good players, NBA players on the team with a Hall of Fame coach, like, yeah, sign me up.
They're so much fun to be had. Like the Hawaii team, they don't necessarily help a lot on defense. They just leave people one-on-one, which can either be great or horrible, depending on how that goes.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of stylistic differences, and look, that's how you make upsets happen. Is you have this crazy, or somebody just goes off from 3-point land, like Jack Golke a few years ago against Kentucky for Oakland. This year, you know, you've seen a lot of the names out there. The one that sticks out because it's the coolest name in general is TJ Power. Power from Penn, who I believe is a 43 or 44% 3-point shooter. So
And if
Maybe
you
he
know
just
how to
goes
find,
off.
if you know how to find the St. Peters of this year, please let me know. I would be very interested in hearing how to do that beforehand.
Nobody could find the St. Peters of that year. Nobody knew that was coming.
You know, the problem with the Cinderella runs is that the Cinderella runs all end before winning the national title. Like, they don't ever win the title. They might go to the Final Four or the Elite Eight, and it's fun. So, like, betting like those teams to win it all is just a waste of money.
Well, and I know what people are saying, like, oh, Butler, if Gordon Hayward's shot goes, they won the national title. Gordon Hayward was the best player on the floor.
Yeah.
In the national title game. That wasn't
an NBA player. So,
that wasn't as big of an upset as you think it would have been.
I just marvel at the St. Peter's one, Andy, because I feel like the entire athletic department budget at St. Peter's was like half of Cal's salary that year.
Oh, I think it was less than that.
Yeah.
I think it was less than half.
Yeah.
So it was insane. But it's going to be so much fun, and I do hope there's another St. Peter's in the mix here. We'll see. But a Dunk City, like, remember Dunk City in 2015? They took out a 2 seed and then they make it to the Sweet 16. I mean, that was awesome. Absolutely awesome. So that's what we're hoping for. Love this week. We're going to talk some football this week too, but we'll also get back into basketball. Scheduling notes this week. On Thursday and Friday, listen, we know you want to watch basketball. We want to watch basketball too. So the show was going to come out at 10 a.m. Eastern time. On Thursday and Friday morning, we'll be live at 10 a.m. Eastern time talking about everything that happened in Thursday's games and getting you ready for Friday's games. Because, again, as much as we love college football, this might be the best week in American sports. We'll talk to you tomorrow.